So TBA, as I mentioned, that's to be arranged hours. We are funded on our FTES, which is our full-time equivalent students, and there's 5 various types of attendance accounting that we can do for those courses. So the first and the most common is what we call WISH, or it's weekly student contact hours. These are the classes that run the entire semester length, and the class meets at the same day, same time, all semester long. And so those fall under the WISH accounting methodology, and they use a census date for calculating the FTES. What they mean by census date is that whoever is in the class actively enrolled 20% into the semester, then we count those students towards our FTES. The other method of attendance counting is what we call DISH, or daily student contact hours. These are for those courses that run in conjunction with the semester. So these are our short-term courses, our 8-week courses, or our 6-week courses, or our 12-week courses. And those classes must meet at a regularly set day and time during that shortened time frame. And again, you use a census date for capturing the students who are actively enrolled 20% into that particular course. We count towards FTES. For other classes that fall outside either a semester length meeting regularly or a shortened term meeting regularly, there's 3 different types of attendance that you can have. So you can have independent study courses, which are really our online courses, is primarily our independent study courses. And then we have some work experience opportunities. And then there's the to be arranged. And so these are the courses or the labs that don't have a regular schedule every single week at the same day, at the same hour for the entire class. A lot of these courses are related to like our nursing clinicals, where sometimes the clinical schedule isn't established with the students until the second week into the semester or something along those lines. And so the type of attendance accounting that you have to do for those courses is what we call positive attendance or actual attendance, whereby the faculty member needs to track every hour that the student attends so that we can capture those hours in order to convert those into full-time equivalent students. So what happened with our to be arranged courses is there was some misunderstanding of what truly was TBA from the state's perspective and how we defined TBA here locally at the district. And some of those TBA courses were set up within our PeopleSoft accounting or PeopleSoft enterprise system to be collected on either the WISH or the DISH attendance methodology, but since they don't have that regular meeting pattern for the entire class at the same time, they needed to be captured on the positive or the actual attendance. When we discovered that those classes should not be reported based on WISH or DISH, we went back and tried to recreate attendance rosters, working very hard with all the faculty that were involved and trying to capture rosters that they may have in order to capture the number of hours. And unfortunately, we weren't able to capture all of the hours that would have been calculated had they been a true WISH or DISH course. Okay. So, moving on to financial numbers. It's not WISH or DISH anymore. So this is a summary of our third quarter report for the unrestricted general fund, and as of March 31st, 2014. And what we're doing is we are projecting where we think we're going to end the year as of June 30th of 2014. So what we have here on the slide is the adopted budget. This was the budget that the board adopted back in September. The current budget means that was the budget that was in place as of March 31st, 2014. And then our projections are where we think we're going to end the year at June 30th of 2014 with the information that we know at this point in time. So you can see there overall on the revenues and other financing sources, we are currently anticipating that we will receive about $960,000 less than what's in the current budget. And that change column is the difference between the current budget and the projected year end. For our expenditures and our outgo on an aggregate basis, we're currently projecting that we're going to spend about $880,000 less than what is in the current budget. And then the surplus or deficit is going up slightly at projected year end by about $80,000. So at this point in time, we're projecting that our fund balance will be $16,507,816, which is down substantially from what the adopted budget was. You can see there that when we adopted the budget in September, we had thought our fund balance would be $18,675,000, but that has gone down. So the next slides, I'll go over how have we changed from the adopted budget. So here, that first line there was the adopted budget. That was the $18,675,000 that you just saw on the previous slide. And so what has changed to impact that amount? The first line item there is apportionment. We call it P1. That was period 1. And the deficit factor and growth changes. So this is really our state apportionment coming from the state based upon the FTES that we reported back on January 15th. And when the state did our apportionment calculation based upon that, they did apply a 4.36% deficit factor. We build in a 1% deficit factor to our budget, and they applied a 4.36%, which is a substantial decrease in revenue, as you can see there. So the net effect of the changes to our state apportionment in the current year is the $3,099,000. And just as a reminder for those of you on the deficit factor, what that means is when the state calculates our apportionment, they're using our FTES, and there's 3 components to the apportionment. There's the amount coming from the state, there's the amount that we collect locally in our property taxes, and then there's the amount that we collect locally in our enrollment fees. So typically, the property taxes and the enrollment fees have an inverse relationship to the state apportionment. But at any given time, when at a statewide level, the property taxes and the enrollment fees don't come in at the level that the state has budgeted within the state budget, they don't make up the difference with the apportionment that they give to the districts. Instead, they apply what they call a deficit factor. And so this deficit factor has been swinging greatly in the past couple years. I think last year they applied 6 different deficit factors within the fiscal year. So it's really a moving target on the state's end, and them trying to balance their budget with what they pay us. And so that's why you'll see huge swings between our reporting periods of what the state has applied for our apportionment revenue. So current fiscal year, they have applied a 4.36% deficit factor, which means we're losing about $3,099,000. The very next line, again, is related to our apportionment from last year. So this is our 12-13 fiscal year dollars. And as you can see, when the state closed out the books for 12-13, and they did this in late February of 2014, the deficit factor that they had applied and told us was going to occur in August of 13 when we were closing our books was 3.72%. When the state did the final recalculation on the apportionment in February of 2014, they reduced that deficit factor to 0.22%. So we're getting an additional $3.3 million in deficit. So I think that really exacerbates and shows what the state is doing at any given point in time on the revenues that they're applying to us. We also received some additional growth revenue of about $223,000 that we're adding in. The prior year audit adjustment for TBA classes is what I just discussed. That was that 284 FTES. And so we're going to lose about $418,000 as a result of those disallowed FTES. We also have a full-time faculty obligation penalty, whereby in the fall of 13, we were under our full-time obligation number by about 17 positions. So the state will be penalizing us the $1,179,000 there.
Very quickly, Vice President Gable, just to rehash history, we did agree with the faculty leadership last year not to hire any faculty positions, knowing that we would incur a full-time faculty obligation penalty. So I just want to recap that. I think a chunk of those positions, we all agreed we would take the penalty in order to move forward after the program discontinuance process and not hire new faculty positions last year.
Yes, that is correct. This is something really the past 4 years that we've known whenever the state unfreezes the full-time faculty obligation, we knew we were going to be under, and we had originally planned back in 2009 to hire 15 faculty positions each year due to the budget situations and recommendations that were made both at the budget committee and to administration. We didn't hire those 15 positions each year in 3 years running. And so we knew this was coming, and it was fully anticipated and projected.
And there are other colleges that were maybe not took the same approach that we did, that we knowingly were going to be fine. But there are other colleges in the system in California that have also in the same situation, correct?
Yeah, there's at least 10 that I know of, but I don't have the full list of who those are. So yeah, there are other ones out there. You know, the other thing I would say is that these numbers that you're seeing here on the PowerPoint are represented in the document that is attached to your board agenda item there. So if you want to follow that, you can. Moving on to other changes and how things have changed from the adopted budget to
Excuse me, Cassie. So we've got this full-time faculty obligation penalty, if you will. What are we doing to address it in the next couple of years?
First and foremost, for the 14-15 year, we're planning on hiring 40 full-time faculty. And depending upon how many retirements we get in the current year, we may or may not meet our full-time faculty obligation when fall of 14 comes. If we don't meet it, I think it'll be much less than 17 positions. It could be a handful that we may be under, but I think we're trying to do everything that we can to get us back up in compliance with the full-time faculty obligation number. Okay, so moving on to other changes, and I'll try to cover these pretty quickly. We have some other revenue changes that is adding about $225,000 to the budget. Those are primarily increased non-resident tuition revenues that we've received, as well as the extension course fees that Mark covered earlier. We've also had some changes to our expenditures. In November, I think it was in October, the board actually approved providing a $500 bonus to all of our permanent employees. And so the cost of that bonus was $952,000. It wasn't in the adopted budget, and so that was a cost and a change to our projected budget. The winter intersession, this does not include the extension courses. This is strictly the winter intersession that counts towards our FTES. There was a cost of about $203,000. And then we have other salary and benefit savings that have occurred throughout the year, primarily due to vacancies that have existed that haven't been filled throughout this entire year of about $890,000. As Trustee Otto mentioned earlier, we have an election cost savings because we are not having a recall in the current fiscal year, which when we were adopting the budget, we thought that was a distinct possibility. So we're adding back in $1,280,000 for not having to pay for a recall election. And then we have some trans issuance savings and some IRS costs. There were some changes to the governmental accounting standards boards and how we report things, which our auditors uncovered last fall, that we potentially have an IRS liability of about $1.5 million. The difference between that, the $1.5 million and the 1.433 that you see up on the screen is savings from not having to issue a trans. And the trans, as you know, is the tax revenue anticipation note. It's a form of short-term financing that we do in order to provide us cash flow. But our cash flow situation is better than it has been, so we're not issuing a mid-year trans this year. The next two line items are things that were recommended by the Budget Advisory Committee back in January. We're increasing the allocation towards our technology refresh program of about $500,000. And then we're increasing our contribution to our property and liability fund, really for legal fees to the tune of about $350,000. With all of those coming down to our projected fund balance at June 30th of 14 is the $16,507,000. So now if we take that and try to move into and gauge where do we think we're going to be in 14-15 based upon the governor's budget, this is what we'll be going over now. So the first column there, it says 2014, assuming a 3% growth. When Governor Brown came out with his budget in January, he proposed a 3% growth for community colleges. We are putting into our budget the right-hand column, which is assuming a 2% growth. And that is primarily, one, because that's all that we think that we can achieve within one fiscal year is growing by 2%. And probably more importantly is I really don't think that 3% growth is going to hold when the governor comes out with his May revise here in just a couple weeks. The Chancellor's Office has already expressed their concern to the Department of Finance that the statewide Chancellor's Office doesn't think that the system can grow 3%, and so they want that reduced and have the money moved to other priorities. And so that's why we're going to be going with a 2% growth projection within our budget for 14-15. So I'm just going to focus on the numbers on the right-hand column. As it is, the way we do our budgeting is we take the budget from last year. So the adopted budget that we had last year is our starting point, and we add in any changes that we know or anticipate or expect. So right now, and in the aggregate, we're anticipating our total revenues will be $107.4 million. Our total expenditures would be $110.3 million, which would mean that we will be more than likely bringing a deficit budget to the board for approval of about $2,888,000, which would then bring our fund balance down at June 30th of 15 to $13.6 million. And so how did we get our total revenues up to the $107.4 million? The revenues in the 13-14 budget were $104.7 million. We're adding in about $849,000 for COLA, so that's a 0.86% COLA amount that the governor has proposed for community colleges. The access or restoration, that is growth revenue. At the 2% level, we're anticipating that that would generate $1,854,000. From what has happened in the current year, we did see additional growth revenue of about $608,000. And then we have the to-be arranged classes that are being disallowed that's costing $418,000. And again, I mentioned we're not going to be issuing a trans next year, and so we'll lose out on the interest income that we do earn on that tran of about $225,000. So overall, that's where we get that the projected revenues right now we're anticipating could be around $107.4 million. So moving into the expenditures from our 13-14 budget were $103,254,000. And what changes do we know? So here's where I mentioned we're estimating that we're hiring 40 full-time faculty. That cost is $4,585,000. Since we are hiring 40 full-time faculty, we will have some savings on our part-time budgets. So that savings is $1,214,000. We are planning on filling vacant positions on both the classified and management side, as well as creating some new administrative positions to help augment the department heads. So that cost is $1,118,000. Our step and longevity costs on an annual basis cost about $1 million. And then our health benefit increases are going up 6.1%, or about $840,000. I think it's just kind of a coincidence. If you remember previously, our COLA amount that we're receiving is $849,000, and yet our health and benefits are also going up $840,000. And so basically, any COLA that we're receiving is going directly into the cost of providing the health benefits for our employees. In order to generate additional FTES, we will need to increase our part-time faculty slightly from where it was, so we're providing $225,000 for that. And then the election cost savings, where we won't need to budget for the election next year, so that's a savings of $1,378,000. We have technology funding that will have a savings of $1 million. That's because in the 13-14 budget, we had planned on spending $1 million as our technology refresh program, and that was on a one-time basis, so now we need to add that money back. Our OPEB, which means other post-employment benefits, and our retirement incentive obligations are decreasing, so we're adding in $548,000. And then we need to buy new computers for faculty of a cost of about $60,000. That's for the 40 new faculty that we're hiring. We have our property and liability insurance costs are going up about 5%, so that's a $33,500 cost. And then these two items, I think, are really critical. We hear that we're getting all of this money from the state and there's more and more money coming in. In actuality, the only true discretionary money we have is the COLA that I mentioned, which is 0.86% of about $850,000 roughly, and growth money. But that growth money, we have to generate it before we can actually earn it. And so a majority of the money that is coming to community colleges is tied up in categorical programs. And these two line items here, the scheduled maintenance and the instructional equipment, those are both categorical programs that have what we call a match to them. So what that means is on the scheduled maintenance side, for every dollar that the state gives us, we have to match $1 from our unrestricted general fund in order to accept those funds. And so the match on our scheduled maintenance is $1,211,000 that we're going to have to budget. And then our match on the instructional equipment is every $1 that the state, every $3 that the state gives us, we have to match $1. So basically that's a 25% match, which is a cost of $403,000 for us. These other items are more minor, but we do have increases to our energy management system maintenance. That's the $41,000 that you see there. The PERS rate is going up. PERS is for our classified employees. This is the employer's match to their PERS contribution. So that's an additional cost of $56,000 for that increase. Software licensing and our long-term leases are going up by about $85,000. The trans expense savings, again, since we're not issuing the debt, we don't have to pay to issue the debt, so that's a savings of the $325,700. And then we have made offers to both CCA and CHI for salary increases. The cost of those offers are $1,857,000. So in total, all of our expenditures that we're estimating are going to increase from where they were in 13-14 by $7,049,477, which brings our total projected expenditures to just over $110.3 million. So what are our next steps? We're awaiting the governor's May revise. As I mentioned, we're fully expecting the growth funding to go down. And, I say on here 2% may even be optimistic. I think that's more from our standpoint of, are we going to be able to generate 2% in FTES more than where we currently are? We're evaluating the match requirements on SSSP. SSSP is the old matriculation. It's student support services programs. And that currently has a match of, for every $1 that the state gives us, we have to match $3 for that. So that's a really large match. And we are working with the Chancellor's office to try to reduce that match in the future because it's becoming unattainable by many districts to be able to meet that match with so much money. There was a $100 million augmentation on the SSSP funds, which is a huge amount of match that districts are having to make in order to receive that funding. And then there's another $100 million pot of money that they're calling student equity money that we haven't seen anything definitive if there's going to be a match on that. We're hearing that there's not going to be a match, but until it's in writing and actually approved, we won't know what's going to happen. So I think there's still some question on how the 14-15 budget is going to roll out, but these are our best estimates at this point in time of where we think we're going to be. So I'll open it up to any questions that anybody may have.
Questions, members of the board at this time? A lot of information. Student trustee, do you have a question? Chair recognizes our student trustee.
Thank you. This is kind of a question I have oral. It is my understanding that Trustee Uranga got a city elected position, and is he leaving us? And if it's so, we will have to pay for elections.
Can I ask you? That really hasn't to do directly with this, but we're going to bring something up. I'm going to have some things under new business on that item.
Well, it would, I can't answer because we did have a line item for elections where I was saying that we weren't budgeting anything for elections. It would have an impact to where the board will have a choice and we'll have to bring forward what those options are depending on what the board chooses. We could have an election cost, but at this point in time, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Other members of the board at this time? President Oakley?
I have just one quick comment, Board President Kellogg, to the comment that Vice President Gable made that that she is working with the Chancellor's office to work on this budget at the state level. I do want to just make it clear to the board and to the audience that this district does take advocacy very seriously. Vice President Gable serves on the task force that is advising the Chancellor's office on exactly how to distribute these funds. So she is providing that advocacy directly in Sacramento. Vice President Peterson has been working on the SSSP program to develop the criteria for it. I know, and as well as been weighing in on some of the student equity discussions. Most recently, David Morris has become the statewide Senate president, and we've certainly been working with him to advocate on some of these issues as well from his position as statewide Senate president. And I've had the opportunity to work directly with the Director of Finance to answer some of these questions. So we are doing everything we can to ensure that we get every dollar available to our colleges and for use in helping our students be successful. So we're hopeful that those efforts will bear some fruit when we finally have an adopted budget, but there's still a lot of moving parts between now and then.
And also, Trustee Otto is a member of the CCLC statewide board, and I know they're dealing with this budget as well. So I think the first bullet is we're waiting the governor's May revised, and that's going to be the real challenge as we come forward. Other members of the board at this time? This is an informational item only. No other comments or questions? Thank you, Vice President Gable, on that item. We now move though to the action item on this, and that is the 2013-2014 CCFC 311 third quarterly financial status report. Could I entertain a
Move
motion
approval.
to approve that item? Motion by Trustee Bowen, second by Trustee Clark. And this is the report that goes to the state of California. No comments or questions at this time. Madam Secretary, if you could please call the roll on this item.
President Kellogg.
Aye.
Vice President Clark. Aye. Member Bowen.
Aye.
And Member Otto.
Aye.
Next item. We are into the Pacific Coast Campus. No item, no report, correct? Thank you. College Advancement Economic Development, no item, no report. We're next to reports. I should have asked the question, correct? Thank you. Into reports and communications, beginning with the Academic Senate President.
Hello. The Academic Senate has asked me to highlight faculty programs and accomplishments during my report, so I'd like to invite the fabulous Karen Kane to come up to the podium and to give you a really brief presentation about all the changes that have been going on in the kinesiology department. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Karen.
It's a blank? Okay, Board President Kellogg, Superintendent President Oakley, board members, and esteemed colleagues. I'm really happy that Dana asked the kinesiology department to present because you're going to see an evolution of a discipline that's taken place in the last 2 years. So starting by saying we're not your grandma's PE department anymore. So I'm going to give you a little background on what's been happening. But first, we changed our name to kinesiology in spring of 2012. A lot of people had no idea what that meant. So we did a lot of explaining, but the name change more accurately reflects what's going on in our discipline in terms of transfer for students and actually the direction that our discipline is taking. It also is appropriate for the TMCs at the college developing the AAT for kinesiology. When we changed our name, we also publicized through community relations and marketing, a lot of posters and on the web, all of the different avenues that you could take, career paths and discipline paths that you could take with a kinesiology major. And that inspired a lot of students to start thinking about kinesiology if they weren't already. Oops, I went the wrong way. Within the kinesiology department, we have several different areas of study. We have the adapted kinesiology courses, G for general course of study, which would be your traditional sports and not so traditional sports. The IA, or the intercollegiate athletic courses, those are the ones that our athletes are enrolled in. PF, physical fitness courses, and PP, professional prep or theory courses. In 2012, summer of 2012, some of the internal and external pressures and challenges that were facing our area were great. Title V changes on repeatable courses. This not only affected our discipline, but art, music, dance, and several other areas, but it entirely impacted how we were able to offer classes. The 3C2A, which is the board that governs intercollegiate athletics, changed their contact rules, which changed how we could offer curriculum. The Affordable Care Act was coming down the pipe at that time, which affected how we could schedule. We had no identifiable majors to speak of, and our curriculum guide was seriously outdated. This was in the summer to fall of 2012. So here's how we felt. And having all of that upon us at that time, either it drove us into the drink or drove us to drink, depending on your proclivities, but we handled it. But what we ended up doing was we had to reimagine and redesign who we were going to be, what we wanted to be, what we wanted to have said about us, and what we wanted to do for students. So we studied a lot of documentation like EMP goals, institutional priorities. We studied reports out of ACA. We talked with other colleges. We looked at a lot of other programs, and we came up with the direction that we're going today. So through instructional program review and department planning, our department came up with 6 very solid curricular goals that we have accomplished in a very short amount of time. Your IPR usually is a 3-year plan, but we've sort of moved fast, and we've taken care of the goals that we set within about a year and a half. And then in collaboration with the program review in our department plan, we came up with some projects and strategies, one of them being identify 100 majors by spring of 2013. I said this to the faculty in the fall of 2012 when, remember, we had no majors, and this fabulous faculty that I get to work with, they're strategists, they work hard, they never say no, they never say die. I knew they didn't believe we could do it, but they nodded their head and said, okay, let's try. So I said, once we have our 100 majors, let's work on their completion rates. We're going to use technology to strengthen advising. And we came up with the other projects and strategies that you see there